salt and sugar in resin.
Hey guys, Squdge here, welcome back to another video. Thank you very much for joining me today. So today we are going to do a little bit of an experiment with resin and salt. Now I've heard some magical things about salt. I've used salt in paper crafting, but I've never used it in resin before, so I want to give this a go. And just out of the point of experimentation, I thought that we might as well try some with some sugar as well and see if we get the same result, a different result, any result. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to do some experimenting with salt and with sugar, and I hope you enjoy.
So I have got some fine table salt and I'm just splitting it between the pots. So I've done none in the first pot, a little bit in the second, a lot in the third, and then sugar in the fourth pot. I've got my clear resin. I'm just going to mix it in with the different amounts, pour the same amount in each pot, and then I'm just going to mix it so that the salt and sugar are fully mixed in with the resin. I was kind of expecting it to dissolve and it didn't at all. It was really, really bizarre. You know how when you have, I don't know if you ever did, but when I was younger I used to have tea with loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of sugar in because I didn't like the taste of tea, and you'd get it all at the bottom, or on your cereal bowl you'd get like the grainy milk at the bottom. It kind of had that sort of texture for both the sugar and the salt, which was odd. I expected it to dissolve because it's a liquid, but there you go. What I then did was I decided that I would also add a colour to it. So I just got 4 more little pots and I just divided the colour between the 2 pots. So we're going to have the one with sugar. I've split evenly between the 2 pots, making sure to scrape any of the bottom. Same with the large amount of salt, the medium amount of salt, and then obviously the clear I've just split in half. And I thought I'd just use a red just to see if there is any sort of difference when we put a colour on it, whether you still see the same result, whether you don't, whether the colour affects the way it dissolves or anything like that. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of this Resinate red opaque pigment into the 4 at the bottom. I used an opaque colourant because I thought, well, translucent will just be a similar effect to the clear, just with a colour in it. So I wanted to try an opaque colourant to see if that would make any difference. So all I did was just mix it up and make sure that everything was well mixed. And it was still such a weird consistency because it was like resin. And it was thin and it was lovely like resin. And then it had this grain at the bottom. It was very, very weird. And then all I'm going to do is pour them into the moulds with the hearts in. So first one on this side is the clear and then the plain red. Second one is the one with a small amount of salt in the clear, making sure I'm scraping the bottom so that all of that sediment gets in. Same with the red, scrape the bottom, make sure there's no grainy bits left in the pot. Then the third one, just getting everything out of that pot. Third one is where we did lots of salt. So this was, as you can see there, the lumps of salt are still in the resin. So again, pouring it in, making sure to scrape the bottom. You can tell how cloudy that one looks. Same with this red one. This is the one with a lot of salt in the red. So scrape it, make sure nothing is left in the pot. Then I left a gap so that I would remember. And then we're going to do the sugar, sorry. So this top one is sugar in clear resin, and then the one underneath it is going to be sugar in the red resin. And then I had a bit of a thought process, and I wondered if there would be, if we could do it in a different way. So what I decided to do was I poured a little bit of resin that I had left over, just clear resin with nothing in it, into that heart at the top, and I packed in the salt. As you'll see, I just kept pouring salt in, mixing it, pouring salt in, mixing it, pouring salt in and mixing it. I did this for as long as I possibly could until I literally could not fit any more salt into that space, just to see how that looks. And you can tell it's a lot cloudier than the heart just below it to the side. So yes, we're going to leave these to cure for 24 hours and then we'll come back and see our experiment results.
Hey guys, so we are back to demould our experiment with salt and sugar. So we'll start off with the completely untouched resin, the control. So we've got our clear heart, which is gorgeous. There. we've got our clear heart, and we have our red heart. So you can see how it looks with the red. So those are the control groups. Nothing was added to those. Now we have the little bit of salt. So this is a very small amount of salt, and interestingly enough, it's all settled on the bottom. So it's got quite a grainy, bubbly look, and then all the salt has settled on this layer. So there's the clear. And here is the red, and oh, interesting. So I have just touched the surface of this, and the red colouring is coming off. That's quite interesting. There is a slight texture to the top of that. Let me just get a wipe off my fingers. Okay. Right. Next was the lot of salt. And again, oh, that's so cool. It has settled in the front, on the base half. And you get this really cool, like, cloudy effect. It's a little bit tacky. Right, let's do the lots of salt with the red. And again, you can see, I'll try and get a picture of this so you can see it really clearly. The front half, there's definitely a texture to it, but nothing's coming off this one. So I'm guessing it was just the way that mould is, perhaps, I'm not sure. So those are the salt. Then we did sugar, because I wanted to see if sugar would dissolve, because the salt hasn't. And the sugar has not either. So this looks very much like the salt one. And then the red, let's see. So we have the same thing with the red. Nothing coming off it. But there is definitely a difference between this, where the sugar is and where it's not. Then I did the messy one up here, where I basically just poured in as much salt as I physically could. So let's see how this looks. It cured, which I didn't think this one would. In fact, it's so cured that I can't even get the flashing off. It's quite a thick piece. No, there we go, it is coming. Good. There we go. So you can see it a bit easier. And this again is fully cured, it's hard. Nothing's scratching it. And you can just see there was a little bit of extra space for where the I could have added a little bit more salt. But that's quite interesting. I wasn't sure what would happen with those. And do you know what I want to try now? Because this is quite fine salt. I am now going to have a go with some rock salt. I'm not going to do it in the red. We can see that the colouring is very similar. You get the same sort of effect as you'll have seen from the pictures. I want to try this with rock salt and see how the rock salt works with resin. So I hope you'll join me for that. I'll be right back.
So we're going to do it again with rock salt this time. This is the rock salt that I've got. It is in a grinder. I've just taken off the lid so you can see there the rocks. So I'm going to fill this first section up to the top and then do the next two halfway up. I decided to do it this way because when I was cleaning the pots from the previous pour, it was very, very sharp where the resin had cured with the bits of salt in it. So I thought, because these are the rocks, this might actually really cut me. So I put it straight into the mould. And I did go back on my word and decided to do a red one because you need to have the same things to compare accurately. It's just science. So I've mixed up a little bit of red and I'm just going to pour the resin over the top of the salt. And if you watch when I do this first one, it doesn't really sink down. I needed to really mix it through, which was fine. And then I tried to do it a second time and it just went everywhere because I didn't do it slowly enough. So I cleared up my monumental mess and then I poured red into the last pocket, and then we will give this 24 hours to cure and see how it turns out. Oh, I can't wait.
Okay, we are back to open, demould even, our rock salt. Just as a comparison, I'm going to get out the salt and the sugar parts that were saturated, and then the ones that were kind of halfway done over there, and the red ones this way around. So if we start with the red, in exactly the same way as the salt and the sugar, you can't really see anything, but when you take a photo and you look in the right light, there is a little bit of an interesting texture across the top, but you can't feel it. It is completely smooth. So there's the red. We'll do a little bit of salt in the mould. So again, there you get a really clear look at that texture. It is so gorgeous. And then if we turn it sideways, you can see, again, it's all sat at the bottom, and then we've just got a lot of bubbles in this one. A lot of bubbles created. Okay, and then finally, the piece that was completely full of rock salt crystals. We've even got a crystal on the outside, that's how. Okay, so again, lots of bubbles. You can just see there's a tiny bit at the back where I think maybe some slightly dissolved, or they just sort of moved around each other a little bit easier with the liquid of the resin, so I could have possibly put a little bit more in there, but you get this really awesome texture. And there are a lot of bubbles, which is a shame, but the texture on this is so cool. So there we go. My experiments with salt and sugar. You can put both into resin, and whichever one you choose to do gets a slightly different result. I think if you wanted, say you were using a shiny mould and you wanted a certain section of it to be matte for whatever reason, to hide that section, to draw attention to it, whatever you needed, then I think adding either the salt or the sugar, depending on what sort of look you want, would work really well, because they tend to just make it look frosty, and then the bits that aren't covered are still quite clear. So you've almost still got a clear layer behind them. If you wanted something that gives you a bit more of an interesting look and texture, rock salt is really cool. I did not expect that to do that. I think that looks so awesome. The texture is just so much fun. The downside being you do get a heck of a lot of bubbles, but you know, there's only so much you can do, I guess. So yeah, let me know what you think. Would you use salt, sugar, or rock salt in your resin projects? Which finished texture do you like the best? For me, I think it's definitely the rock salt, but it's such a cool technique. I really just want to keep trying and see it in different shaped moulds, see if it would work. So for example, say on a paw print, I could put it in the pads of the paw to give the pads a different coloured, or a different look, should I say, like a matte or textured look compared to the backing, which could be quite cool. There's a lot of options. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I really enjoyed that. I hope you have too. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you have enjoyed it. If you've learned something, let me know down below what you've learned. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I do sort of papercraft, mixed media-y, mini albums, cards, all of that kind of art canvases stuff on a Tuesday. I do resin experiments and artworks and whatever takes my fancy on Friday. And then on the 1st of every other month, at the moment, I am in my design team for Crafters Castle Challenge blog. And yeah, I still have so many ideas of things I want to share with you. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. If you have, thank you ever so much. You are awesome and I love you all. And I will see you on the next one. Have a great week. Make sure you're keeping safe. Things are starting to ease. I'm hoping everyone keeps following the rules and pretty soon we'll actually be able to see people. Anyway, I will see you all soon. Keep crafting, guys. Bye.